Whispers in the void, Commander. Zixara floated through the crystalline corridors of Meridian Station, her tentacles rippling with exhaustion. For 3 cycles she had been cataloging artifacts from the dead world below. The planet designated XK739 was another tomb in space, another civilization that had risen and fallen before the current species of the galaxy had even discovered fire. Her job was to find out why they died and ensure the same fate didn't befall the United Galactic Assembly. The station hummed with activity. Scientists from 40 different species worked side by side, their various forms of locomotion creating a strange dance through the zero-gravity research pods. Some crawled along the walls with sticky appendages, others floated like Zixara, and a few used mechanical assists to navigate. Despite their differences, they all shared the same purpose, uncovering the secrets of the past to protect the future. Today felt different. The energy readings from the planet's core had spiked during the night cycle, revealing a chamber that had been sealed for millennia. Whatever was inside had been protected by technology so advanced that even their best equipment struggled to penetrate its defenses. It took their combined expertise and 3 days of careful work to finally breach the outer seal. What they found inside changed everything. The chamber walls were covered in writings from dozens of extinct languages, some Zixara recognized from her studies. The flowing script of the void dancers, the angular marks of the crystal shapers, the circular patterns of the mind weavers. All civilizations that had vanished thousands of years ago. But they all told the same story, repeated over and over in different tongues. A warning. Dr. Keelan, a silicon-based lifeform from the lattice worlds, processed the translations through his crystalline neural network. His body glowed brighter with each passage he decoded, a sign of increasing distress among his kind. Commander, his voice resonated through the chamber. These are not historical records. They are warnings. All of them speak of the same thing. Zixara moved closer to the central pillar where the most intact writings were preserved. The universal translator in her environmental suit worked overtime, trying to make sense of the ancient text. Finally, words began to form in her mind. The children of Earth shall return. When the stars align and the void calls out, they shall emerge from the darkness between, not as they were, but as they have become. The betrayed shall have their reckoning. Similar messages covered every surface. Tales of a species that had been cast out, exiled to the empty spaces between galaxies, stories of beings who could adapt to any environment, who possessed creativity and determination unlike any other, beings who had been feared so much that the ancient civilizations had united just to remove them from existence. Humans, whispered Dr. Keelan. They're all talking about humans. Zixara felt her chromatophores shift to a deep purple, the color of skepticism among her people. Everyone knew the stories of humans. They were bedtime tales told to young ones. Myths about creatures that walked on 2 legs and conquered through sheer stubbornness. Beings who could survive anywhere, adapt to anything, and who viewed the impossible as merely a challenge to overcome. But they were just stories. They had to be. The United Galactic Assembly's High Council certainly thought so. When Zixara presented her findings via quantum communication, the response was exactly what she had feared. Laughter. Dismissal, orders to focus on real science instead of chasing fairy tales. High Counselor Vraktor, whose species had been part of the assembly for 10,000 years, was particularly dismissive. His scaled face filled the communication screen, 6 eyes blinking in sequence as he spoke. Commander Zixara, we appreciate your enthusiasm, but the human myth has been thoroughly investigated. They never existed. These writings you've found are simply the result of cultural contamination, stories that spread through ancient trade routes and became embedded in various mythologies. But High Counselor, Zixara protested, the mathematical probability of identical stories arising independently in civilizations separated by thousands of light years is irrelevant, Vraktor interrupted. We have real threats to deal with. Pirates in the Outer Rim, resource disputes in the Helix Nebula, and trade negotiations with the Synthetic Coalition. We cannot waste time and resources investigating children's stories. Continue your archaeological survey and report any actual findings. The connection terminated, leaving Zixara floating in frustrated silence. But she couldn't let it go. The warnings were too specific, too urgent. And there was something else. A pattern in the ancient star charts found in the chamber. They showed stellar positions that would only align once every 12,000 years. According to her calculations, that alignment was happening now. 3 weeks later, the first colony went silent. Outpost Theta on the edge of assembly space simply stopped transmitting. No distress signal, no indication of attack or system failure. When reconnaissance ships arrived, they found the colony intact but empty. 30,000 beings of various species had simply vanished, leaving behind meals half-eaten, work half-finished, and a message burned into the main plaza. "We remember." Then came the second disappearance, then a third. Always on the frontier, always complete, always leaving the same message. The High Council could no longer ignore what was happening. They dispatched the Fourth Fleet to investigate. 500 of the most advanced warships in the Assembly's arsenal. The fleet found something waiting for them at the coordinates of the latest disappearance. Admiral Cross stood on the bridge of his flagship, the infinite resolve staring at his sensors in disbelief. His insectoid eyes, capable of seeing in spectrums most species couldn't imagine, were all focused on the same point in space. There was something there, something massive, but their instruments couldn't quite lock onto it. It was like trying to focus on a shadow made of starlight. "Signal incoming," his communications officer announced. The voice that filled the bridge was unlike anything in their databases. It spoke in perfect assembly standard, but with an accent that seemed to come from nowhere and everywhere at once. "Greetings, children of the stars. We are humanity. We have returned." The shadow in space began to solidify, and Admiral Cross felt his exoskeleton rattle with instinctive fear. Ships materialized from the darkness, not one or two but hundreds. They were impossibly large, their hulls black as the void between galaxies, decorated with symbols that hurt to perceive directly. They moved without any visible propulsion, sliding through space as if the laws of physics were merely suggestions. The human ships arranged themselves in a formation that was both beautiful and terrifying, creating a pattern that seemed to shift and change depending on the angle of observation. They made no aggressive moves, but their mere presence was a statement of power beyond anything the Assembly had imagined. "This is impossible," Admiral Cross muttered. His tactical officer, a young being from the cloud worlds, was frantically running scans trying to understand what they were seeing. "Sir, these ships, they're not using any technology we can identify. No fusion reactors, no antimatter cores, no zero-point energy modules. It's like they're powered by something else entirely, something we don't have words for." On the main view screen, one of the human ships moved closer. It was sleek and organic-looking, as if it had been grown rather than built. Strange lights pulsed along its hull in patterns that seemed almost like breathing. A figure appeared on their communication channel, bipedal, just like the old stories described. It wore form-fitting armor that seemed to be made of condensed starlight, and its eyes held depths that spoke of journeys through spaces between spaces. "I am Captain Marcus Rodriguez of the Terran Expeditionary Force," the figure said. His face was weathered but kind, with lines that spoke of both laughter and sorrow. "We've been waiting a very long time for this moment. The galaxy has forgotten us, but we have not forgotten the galaxy." The return of Terra's children. Captain Rodriguez stood on the bridge of his ship, the Remembrance, and studied the alien fleet before him. After 12,000 years of exile, humanity was finally facing those who had inherited the galaxy they had once called home. His crew, descendants of the billion humans who had been cast into the void, waited for his next words with patient determination. The transformation of humanity during their exile would have been impossible to predict. Cast out into the empty spaces between galaxies, they should have died within a generation, but humans had always been stubborn. They had adapted, evolved, and eventually thrived in conditions that would have destroyed any other species. The void had changed them, made them something more than they had been. "Admiral Cross," Rodriguez spoke calmly to the insectoid commander, "I imagine you have many questions. We're prepared to answer them, but first you should know that we mean no harm to the current civilizations of the galaxy. Our issue is not with you." Cross's compound eyes flickered with confusion. "If not with us, then with whom? And how are you here? Humans are myths, legends told to children." Rodriguez smiled sadly. "Myths often have roots in truth, Admiral. We were real and we were betrayed, not by your species or any currently in the Assembly. Your civilizations were still developing when the crime against humanity was committed. The ones who exiled us are long dead. Their empires turned to dust, but their actions echo through time. He gestured, and historical records began transmitting to the alien fleet. Not the sanitized myths or fragmentary legends, but the true history of humanity, preserved in the quantum memory cores of their ships. Images of Earth in its prime, blue and green and teeming with life. Videos of humans and aliens working side by side in the early days of galactic civilization. Records of the fear that grew as other species realized how quickly humans adapted, how fast they bred, how their chaotic creativity could solve problems that stumped even the most logical minds. The records showed the secret alliance formed by the elder races, the decision to remove humanity before they became too powerful to control. The great betrayal, when humanity's supposed allies turned their weapons on Earth, scorching it to glass and hunting down human colonies across the galaxy. The final exile, when the last billion humans were loaded onto prison ships and sent into the void between galaxies, expected to die in the darkness. But we didn't die, Rodriguez continued. We adapted as humans always have. The void changed us, yes, but it didn't break us. We learned to harvest energy from the quantum foam itself, to navigate dimensions that your science hasn't discovered yet. We built new worlds in the spaces between spaces, raised our children on stories of the stars we had lost, and waited. Back on Meridian Station, Commander Zixara watched the transmission with growing horror. The evidence was undeniable. The archaeological records she had found weren't warnings about some mythical threat. They were confessions. The ancient civilizations had been guilty of genocide, and they had spent their final years in terror that their victims might somehow return. Dr. Keelan's crystalline form pulsed with distress. This changes everything. The founding mythology of the Assembly, the age of peace that supposedly followed the disappearance of the warlike elder races. It was built on a lie. The High Council was in emergency session, every member species represented. The revelation of humanity's existence had shaken them, but the truth of their exile had shattered their understanding of galactic history. High Counselor Vraktor, who had been so dismissive of Zixara's warnings, now sat in stunned silence as the human captain continued his explanation. We watched from the void as the civilizations that exiled us fell one by one, Rodriguez said. We could have returned then, could have taken revenge on dying empires, but we chose to wait. We wanted to see what would grow in our absence, whether the galaxy would become something better. And in many ways it has. Your assembly, despite its flaws, seeks peace and cooperation. You've learned from the mistakes of your predecessors. Then why return now? Admiral Cross asked. If you bear us no ill will, why reveal yourselves? Rodriguez's expression grew serious. Because the alignment has come. The same stellar configuration that allowed our exile also allows our return. We've spent 12 millennia preparing, evolving, becoming something new. We return not as conquerors, but as reclaimers. Earth is still ours by right, though it remains a dead world. The colonies taken from us, the resources stolen. We intend to reclaim what was ours. The human fleet began to move, not toward the assembly ships, but past them. More vessels materialized from the void. Thousands upon thousands of ships varying in design, from sleek scouts to massive city ships that defied comprehension. They spread across the galaxy's edge like a tide of shadows and starlight. We've located every world that once belonged to humanity, Rodriguez announced. Most are dead now, tombs of civilizations that built their empires on our ashes. We will reclaim these worlds and make them live again. Those currently inhabited by your species will not be touched. We're not here to repeat the crimes done to us, but the dead worlds, the empty systems, the resources that float unclaimed, these will be ours once more. The Assembly had no legal grounds to object. The dead worlds were technically unclaimed, and if humanity's historical records were accurate, they had prior claim anyway. But the military leaders were terrified of the implications. The human ships demonstrated technology beyond their understanding, power that could reshape the galaxy if wielded aggressively. It was Zixara who proposed the solution. Speaking through the quantum communication network from Meridian Station, she addressed both the Assembly and the human fleet. Captain Rodriguez, if humanity truly seeks reconciliation rather than revenge, then perhaps we can find a path forward together. The galaxy has changed much in your absence. New threats have emerged, challenges that require innovative solutions. Your technology combined with our resources could benefit everyone. Rodriguez considered her words. Around him, his bridge crew, humans transformed by generations in the void, some barely recognizable as the species they had once been, waited for his decision. They had prepared for war, for revenge, for 1,000 different scenarios, but they had also hoped for something better. "Commander Zixara," Rodriguez finally replied, "you speak wisdom. We did not survive the void only to become what our betrayers feared we were. Very well. Humanity will petition for membership in the United Galactic Assembly. We will share our knowledge, our technology, and our strength. But know this, we will never again allow ourselves to be vulnerable to betrayal. Our ships will remain, our defense is absolute. We extend our hand in friendship, but it is a hand that can become a fist if threatened." The galaxy held its breath as the High Council voted. One by one, each member species cast their decision. The vote was unanimous. Humanity would be welcomed into the assembly. The future was uncertain, but one thing was clear. The children of Earth had returned, not as the monsters their enemies had feared, but as something far more powerful, survivors who had chosen forgiveness over vengeance. As the human fleet spread across the galaxy, reclaiming dead worlds and bringing them back to life with technology born from the void, the other species watched in awe and trepidation. The legends had been true but incomplete. Humans were indeed adaptable, stubborn, and creative to the point of impossibility, but they were also capable of mercy, of growth, of choosing a better path even when revenge would have been justified. The empty colonies that had vanished began to return their populations. The beings who had disappeared hadn't been kidnapped. They had been shown visions of the truth given the choice to witness humanity's return. They came back with stories of cities between stars, of humans who had learned to sail the cosmic winds, of children who played in gardens grown from quantum probability. On the bridge of the Remembrance, Captain Rodriguez looked out at the stars that had once been denied to his people. Earth remained dead, a monument to betrayal and loss, but humanity lived on, transformed and transcendent. They had been cast into the void as prisoners, but they returned as masters of spaces beyond imagination. The galaxy would never be the same. The legends of humanity had become reality, and that reality was both more terrible and more wonderful than anyone had imagined. The warships that filled the sky were not harbingers of destruction, but guardians of a species that had survived the impossible and chosen to build rather than destroy. In the end, the greatest fear of the ancient civilizations had come true. Humanity had returned. But their greatest mistake was not understanding what they feared. They had tried to destroy humanity because they saw only the danger. They failed to see the potential, the capacity for growth and forgiveness that made humans truly remarkable. Now, 12,000 years later, their descendants would have the chance to do better. The age of legends was over. The age of truth had begun.